I work part-time for my university's IT department. I manage the public computer sites, fixing machines when they're broken, handle scheduling of other consultants, etc. I'm mostly on call all the time, and during a summer weekend, there's not much to expect except to get paid. The campus library is across the hall from my office. Normally, it is open, even on weekends, but it was closed for the intersession this weekend before the semester begins. Lights off, doors locked. There's no way to get in unless you have a swipe access card, which I do. There are computers in there. So, I'm in my office passing time on the internet when I hear a bit of a racket. I peek out the door and there's this bigger man, probably about 40, tugging on the doors, trying to rip them open. He doesn't notice me come out and asks, more like yells, "When is this place open?" I pointed to the hours sign and explained that it would be open on Monday when the classes begin. He walks away and seems unsatisfied with the answer. More time passes. Out of boredom, I decided to go check out the library. Now, I've only ever been in there once before while it was shut. I swipe my card and go in. It's really creepy in that place when it's shut. I wasn't supposed to be there. If I got caught, I'd probably be in some trouble. I really didn't have permission or reason to go there, especially not in another department during the closing hours. All the lights are off except, with the only light coming through the windows. This place is huge. You can hear ventilation fans clicking on and off. As I began creeping past some of the rows and aisles, the locked door study doors start creaking and occasionally make noises as if somebody's inside them. Now by this point, the library's been closed for almost 24 hours at this point, and no one likely camped out in there, it's just noises. Still, as I walk alone in this place, it feels like I'm not alone. I go to the lounge area and sit down, but I feel uncomfortable with the dark silence and get up soon. I walk to the bathroom. As soon as I walk in, I notice there's somebody in the stall. All I can see is one foot at first glance from underneath the door. One naked foot, no shoes or socks, in a public restroom. One bloody foot, and there's a small pool of blood on the floor in the stall. I froze and immediately tightened up. I was really startled because nobody is supposed to be in there. Second, there's a bloody foot. I didn't see any sort of socks or shoes around, no pants around or anything. I didn't even see a second foot, just a pale, cold white foot, large too. The store is partially open, but not enough that I could see inside from my angle. I say with a shaken voice, "Hello?" No response. Nothing happens. I wonder if there's even a body attached to the foot. I wonder if there's a dead body inside. I then ask, "What are you doing, man?" The toes then curl up and relax. I promptly turn right out to go towards the door and walk out of the library. I go back into my office as I try to make sense of what I just seen. Should I call campus cops? The thing is, I really didn't want to get any of the paperwork on my hands, questions with the police, etc. I justified that I wasn't supposed to be over there anyway, and I was going to have to lie about why I was there. Instead, I called my friend on the phone. I just wanted to talk to somebody. I felt so uneasy. Now Andy and I talked for a good 40 minutes. Most of it just like, wow, that's messed up, and no startling discoveries. Heavily considering calling the police now, but so much time had passed that I assumed the person would be gone, and also, this person certainly appeared to be on their own. I decided to go back and stay on the phone with Andy. I know how stupid this is. If somebody is hurting themselves, they may not care much about hurting me either. They're probably very unstable, and they have some kind of blade or knife on them. I'm not in any mood to get into a knife fight here during my shift. I want to check out the bathroom again. As I walk through the library, it's worse this time, because now I'm not alone. There's somebody here, probably with a weapon. It's still dead silence and dark at this point. I softly walk into the bathroom and listen outside the door for a moment. I don't hear any sounds, but I get chills. Andy's on the speakerphone. He's also staying silent. I go inside. The foot is still there. There's more blood than before. Cold and pale looking. The doors are now shut. That's the only other change that's happened in the last 40 minutes. I was really hoping not to see anybody in here this time. I don't want to anger a possibly suicidal person. I ask, "You alright?" No response. Only blood. I repeat, "You alright there? Have I got a call for help?" Slowly, the foot turns and points towards me. A second foot steps down alongside it. Whatever is inside the store is now standing and facing directly at me, with only a wall between us. I can't see the top of any head. My heart starts racing. Finally, a deep voice responds with, "I'm fine." This is a good enough reason for me to turn around and leave. I told myself before going in here that if he was still there, I'd call the cops. I didn't. He was fine. I wanted to put this thought through my head and forget it. The voice sounded like an older man, I guess 30 or 50. The size of the feet made him seem really big, but not that tall. It's hard to say really. I lock the door to my office and do nothing for the last 30 minutes or so of my shift. When I step out into the hallway, there are bloody foot marks walking out of the library and over to my office door. There's actually plenty of them outside my door. It was pacing and standing there for a while. Small drips of blood leading away from the door and stopping after a small distance. I was absolutely horrified. I hurried back to my truck. I paused for a moment and realised with the amount of blood outside my office door in the hallway, I just can't leave. I'd probably be asked about it anyway. I should just call it in. I then head back up, and to my horror, I find that all the footprints are gone. All of the bloody prints have been moved away. All the blood smears are there though. It's not a perfectly good cleaning job, but I was only gone for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Whatever it was is still hanging around, watching me, cleaning up after itself too. I'm very scared. I go back to my truck. There's a bloody towel on my door handle. This person is seriously trying to mess with me. I hurry right over to the campus police. I'm just going to tell them the whole story, even the fact that I was trespassing, and that I went back for a second visit instead of calling the cops. And I did. I told them all. They took pictures of my car and told me that they're going to look into it. They returned to the library but requested that I didn't accompany them inside. I went home. This was over 2 days ago now. I haven't heard anything since. This happened months ago, but I can remember everything that happened as clear as day. I worked at a Pendra bread restaurant and had a bread bash, which is sort of a meeting for all employees to update the menu and such. I had a shift that ended at night, but I finished everything up early and waited out in the lobby with my friend. It was a while until the meeting actually began, so my friend and I decided to go grab a coffee at the nearest Starbucks. We actually get in and out of the Starbucks pretty quickly and begin walking back to my car when I notice a man staring at us from the next parking lot over. Thinking nothing of it, we take our time to get into our car when I notice he starts running towards us. I tell my friend quickly to get in the car. Now both of us are females and we can't really trust random men. I just close my door as he catches up to us looking swiftly. I suppose he didn't notice how fast we got inside, or how quickly the car locks up, so he quickly knocks on my window trying to open the door. I was already looking up at him. He then said to me that I had to roll the window down, but I motioned to my ear and said that I can't hear him. He says he needs a ride and points past the Starbucks to the right. Luckily, I was telling the truth and informed him we have a meeting at our work. It's the opposite way. He then said to me that, "Oh, it's okay, you're not going to be much later, just let me in." I tell him no. It's too dangerous, I'm not going to let a stranger into my car. Now on the way back, my friend asked me why I didn't let him in since our meeting didn't start for another 20 minutes or so, but I simply told her that, no, I'm never going to let a stranger go for a ride. This shuts her up. Well, after the meeting was finishing up, I remembered it takes about 20 minutes to get home and my car would not make it back, so I asked a few of my friends if they needed to fill up their cars since I absolutely hated going to the gas station alone at night. Unfortunately, they all said no, and I decided to tough it out and go across the street to the Sphinx. I parked at pump number 7 and grabbed cash to go inside. Once I'm inside, I grab a bag of chips before getting ready to pay gas when I look up and make eye contact with someone familiar. It's a stranger from earlier who wanted a ride. I know it's the same person because he was a skinny white male that appeared to be anywhere from his late 20s to early 30s with messy brown hair and a patchy beard. He also had a baggy brown hoodie on and baggy jeans. I felt my heart beat faster after seeing him exit the store. I then paid for my stuff and stand around a few other people as I peer outside. The stranger was standing around my car for a solid few minutes before walking away. Once I saw no sign of him, I walked out behind a very large man and made my way towards my car. I'm $6 into pumping gas in my car and I look over towards the buildings and see the stranger push off from the wall and beginning to walk straight over to me. He throws a cigarette on the ground during the process. I swear gas never pumped so slowly in my life. I realise that there's no way to physically make the gas pump any quicker, so I put my keys between my knuckles. He looks at me. I give him an uncomfortable half smile. He then asks me if he knows me from somewhere, and I pretend to examine him as if he was familiar but shook my head. He then asks me what my real name is. What he said next makes my skin crawl. "Well, Valerie, I need a ride over there and you're the prettiest one here, so I was wondering maybe you could give me a ride over there." As he said this, he was pointing to his right again, which made me wonder why he decided to go even further from his desired destination, and why he was not just simply able to walk over there the whole time. I told him that my parents needed me home since it was a school night and it's already late, but he reached a hand out for me, and I was slowly pumping gas still. I flinched away noticeably. He then said, "I'll be quick, I just need a quick ride." At this point, I believe he hasn't recognised me from the encounter at Starbucks, but I then again tell him that my parents are expecting me home any minute now, and he huffs away before finally walking off. I then finished everything and quickly gone inside my car, lock my doors and go on a different route home. I have never given a ride to a stranger and I never will. The way he was acting proves how important this is. He was obviously out there just looking for vulnerable girls, and I'm glad that I wasn't his victim.
This happened when I was about 19. My mom and my younger sister went out to the grocery store. My older brother was at a friend's house, so I had the house to myself for an hour or two. I was relaxing and watching some TV when I heard footsteps coming from upstairs. Now, I'm a very paranoid person, and I just kept telling myself that I'm okay and that it's an old house, just thinking of rational explanations. So I turned down the TV a little bit to show myself I didn't hear any footsteps. About 20 seconds after I turned down the TV, I don't hear anything. I start feeling a little comforted, until I heard my younger sister's bedroom door open. I immediately rise up, looking up the staircase. I was relieved to see it was my cat, but but I thought it was weird that 1, my sister would never lock her cat in her room, and 2, I didn't know the cat had enough force to push the door open. Again, I thought that the cat snuck in and she accidentally locked him in there, and since my sister's door is so fragile, anyone can easily push the door open. Honestly, after the event, it could have been the cat, but it's still a little weird though. I start to laugh at myself, calling myself too paranoid. I sit back down on the couch and continue watching TV for another few minutes before deciding to go outside and walk around the driveway. It's the only exercise I get. I go outside and start walking around the driveway. Now, an important thing to remember, my older brother, a few months before this event happened, accidentally broke my blinds while trying to pull them up, so anyone can easily see inside my room, but I've been too busy with work and too lazy to actually buy some curtains. I'll walk around the driveway about 5 to 6 times. When I look up to my room, I see a man. I can't make him out that well, as the reflection of a tree in our yard reflected on the window, so I can make out he was 55 to 60, had gray hair, a stained green shirt, and a black baseball cap on. He didn't see me as he was snooping in my room, and I saw him holding some of my necklaces. I grab my phone from my pocket and start dialing the police. When I get off the phone with them and look up, the man is staring at me. He was smiling and waving his old crusty fingers before he proceeded to signal for me to come up there. I cringed and started to cry, all of this within 15 seconds. Then what happened next makes me disturbed and yet hysterical. He started wiping his ass against my window. I noped the fuck out of there, running down my street and almost getting run over by the cops. They found feces on my window and a couple of $20 bills stolen, and my closet ransacked. He must have made an escape when I was running down the road. The incident does really freak me out, knowing a man was upstairs this whole time while I was home alone, and God knows how he got in.
I was about 15 when my brother's girlfriend moved in with us. I was told that she was scared to be at home, so she moved in with us. Though I never really knew what it was that she was afraid of. I didn't really care as a kid, to be honest. I was excited at the prospect of having a sister. I was thinking about all the things I'd be able to do with her that I couldn't do with my brother. Honestly, it started out really well. I felt pretty close to her. At one point, I asked her to give me some music recommendations because I got an iPod and was excited and wanted to use it as soon as possible. Things were normal at first. After a while, I did start to notice things. Some of my stuff would go missing. Nothing major, hair clips, stuff like that. I would let my parents know that there were things that had gone missing, but I was a kid and would lose things all the time. I didn't really think it was a big deal because these things that were going missing weren't exactly major. But then accusations started. She started telling my parents that I was stealing from her, that she caught me red-handed. I had no idea what she was talking about. On many occasions, I actually pointed out to her that I didn't need any of the things that she was talking about. My parents told me not to take anything that was hers, though I think they knew that she wasn't really being honest. This happened for a long time. At one stage, I had friends over and we were making pancakes. She stormed off angrily when she saw us because I was using her frying pan. I have no idea, honestly. It's a frying pan, who cares? Anyway, cut about a year or so later. At this time, I was pretty into Tumblr. I had an account on there and would blog pretty much everything I did in a day. I remembered being really excited because I had gotten to a certain number of followers. Then the messages started. Now, I wasn't naive. I had received anonymous messages before and thought nothing of them. People like to bring others down. For the most part, I just laughed at these messages. I responded to them with little jokes, which was my way of letting them know that I wasn't going to let them get to me. After a few days, these messages continued. Now I didn't care much until I got one that terrified me. I honestly can't remember the exact wording, but it was something along the lines of, "You think you're so good sitting on that couch upstairs? That's right, I see you." I felt myself freeze up when I read it. My heart started pounding, instinctively looking out the window, not sure what I was expecting to see. There was no one there though. Not what I could see, but whoever it was sending me was bothering me. They knew exactly where I was in my home. I had gone from laughing these messages off to being absolutely terrified. There was part of me that thought that maybe she was behind this, but I had no proof. I didn't tell my parents right away because I didn't want to tell them, then they'd not let me on the site anymore. I kept the messages from that point on. I didn't post them, I just kept them in my inbox trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. Now I remembered at one point my parents had to leave me at home alone with just my brother's girlfriend, and I told them that I was scared of her and I didn't want to stay home alone with her. Now it took a lot of convincing, but they eventually let me stay at a friend's home instead. After a while of worrying, I told a friend about what had happened. They told me that they knew a way to track the IP of the messages I was getting. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know how that stuff worked, but I agreed to let my friend do it. I let them log on to my account, and they went through and told me that from the IP, they could tell that the person who sent the message was indeed in the same country as I was. But that didn't really narrow things down. I then asked my friend if they could check the IP of another message, one that I sent. The IP was identical to the one that had sent me those messages. It was somebody in my home. My brother wasn't really big on social websites. There was no way in hell that my parents had sent it. I felt like this was all the proof I needed. Finally, I went to my parents about this. I told them about the messages I'd gotten. I told them about the IPs and everything. My parents called my brother and his girlfriend upstairs to talk to me about it. She smiled, telling my parents that she had no idea what we were talking about. That's until my parents told her about the IPs. Suddenly, she completely lost it. She was screaming about how I was a favourite, how much she hated me. I've never been so scared before. Most of what I remembered about that night was screaming. I ended up going outside with my phone and sitting on the front lawn. I needed to get away from everything. There's not much more to say. My dad told me that she only told him that she hated me when I said I was a favourite daughter. Now I was his only daughter. After that day, I stayed as far away from her as I possibly could. When she is around, I didn't speak. I didn't want to give her any fuel. My parents told me that she wasn't taking her medication, and it probably had something to do with it. I didn't know if she was on her meds now. She and my brother moved out a while ago though. My parents tell me that she's like a different person now. She seems much happier, but I don't visit. Whenever I see her, I remember that fear. I'm sure she's a nice girl. I'm sure if she's on her medication, she can be fine. I'm sure she's doing much better, but after all the crazy stuff she did to me, I can't bring myself to face her.
I remember this story yesterday evening. I was having lunch with my brother when he asked, "Hey, are you still living at this address?" I responded with a, "No, and thank God." Here's why. This was my first house, other than the one where I had lived with my parents. I shared it with 2 other roommates, and one of them was a crackhead who was barely home. but she always paid her dues, so no problem. And there was this one night where I knew my roommates weren't gonna be home, so I went to the drugstore on the corner to get ice cream and rental movies, so that I could enjoy my night with some cookie dough and comedy. Anyways, while I biked back to my house from the store, I brought my bike up to the front porch, where I noticed the lock to my front door had been knocked off. The door was creaked slightly open, and I could see what was left of my chain lock on the floor. I didn't live in a very good neighborhood, so I always went out through the garage and hardly used the front door. And it was almost completely locked, chain, deadbolts, and everything. I knew something was wrong, and I was completely terrified. So I called the local sheriff and told him that my house had been broken into. When I told him my address, the operator went silent, then told me to call the police immediately. I called 911 while standing in the middle of the road out front of my house. Ice cream in hand, ready to Ben and Jerry anyone who would come after me. And I told them what was going on. They said that they had a SWAT team on the way, and I asked the operator why.
Because that house address was given to the police station on an anonymous tip that someone was going to get murdered in.
I thought my stomach had just turned inside out. How? I'm the only one that's supposed to be home tonight. It was after I'd said that it hit me. My roommate, the cracked one, had said to me just a few days before we'd all have to pay our rent. I might be a little short on mine. I'm loose on the money these days, and I'm struggling to pay a few other people off. I had just brushed it off at the time, but now it made sense. Cops and SWAT came, and they escorted out 4 men, each of them looking like they'd each just gotten a hard hit of drugs, which they probably had. They were all taken into custody, and I'm not entirely sure what came of them, but I do know this. According to the police, my cracked friend had actually come forward. She was the original tipper, and then later confessed. She couldn't pay her debt on these guys, and so promised me as payment. Said I'd be home alone and they could do whatever they wanted to me. I haven't seen her in about 5 to 6 years now, and I never want to ever again. I moved out within the following week, and I spent each night of the following week at my said brother house, although I never did tell him why I'd moved out in the first place. He still doesn't know what happened at that place. And so, drug use in my house, I hope for your sake I never see you again. This happened about 5 years ago, in the area in which I grew up and back when I was up to no good. I have since then turned my life around and am no longer in touch with anyone from that part of my life. And to give a little context and backstory, I was one of a few people that moved pain pills in my city. Most people would import cheaply made pills from around the world, so you never quite knew what was in them. Word quickly got around that I was supplying authentic ones. Because of this, I was in touch with some not so great people, and people always kept eyes on me. Business was going well, and I would always carry a little bit on me, just in case. But this also attracted the wrong kind of people, obviously. This took place on a nice, warm summer's day. I was walking around enjoying the weather and trying to figure out what to do with the day. Basically, where I lived, there's one main road and apartments on both sides. My apartment had a parking lot in front of it. To the right of that were more apartments with rows of trees behind, and behind those trees used to be a massive field, but they had just built apartments there. So I was walking through the trees on my way to a park when I heard gunshots to my left. I jumped to a very wide tree and hid behind it. At first, I wasn't sure what was going on, but then I could see the leaves from the overgrowth around the tree move with the gunshots. I waited for silence before I peeked from behind the tree. I saw a guy in one of the windows holding a gun. I ran as fast as I could back to my block, where I then slowed down to walking pace. I don't know why I didn't go home. Instead, I opted to walk towards the big hill close to the school I went to growing up. I kept looking behind me to see if I was being followed. At first, there was no one, so I was quite relieved. Until two people came around the corner. My alarm bell still hadn't gone off, but I was cautious. They split up slightly, which made my alarm bells go off slightly, and I started walking faster. They sped up too, and I saw one of them reach for something in his waistline. This is when I broke into a full-on sprint. As I ran to where my childhood friend lived, which was about a 3-minute sprint, I could hear both of them behind me. When I got to her apartment building, I punched in the code to enter. Wrong code. The codes changed a few times each year. I called her and luckily she was home and let me in. I explained my situation and stayed there for a few hours before I felt safe enough to walk back home. She offered to walk with me, but I didn't want to risk it and walk back by myself. It was one nerve-wracking walk.
Thank you for watching, everyone. I want to say a massive thank you to my friend Nightmarish Tales for featuring on this video. Make sure you go and check out his channel and subscribe to him. I've got a link to his channel in the description below. We're going to be working on a couple of videos together soon, so make sure you stay posted for that. I hope you enjoyed my video and have a great day. I'll talk to you all soon, and thank you again to my friend Nightmarish Tales.